Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We're going to have Ryan Gerdusky on. He's going to talk about Donald Trump's surprising failure with white men in particular. We're going to have Brianna Joy Gray on. She's going to dig into the Dem Civil War, which has sort of already exploded immediately after the election ended. But we wanted to start with where we are in terms of the election, the various claims that are being made, and honestly to kind of pour some cold water on everyone and calm the waters a little bit.
Yeah, I think everybody does need to calm, and that just really means you're going to straight lace. Let's go through all of the facts. It's been a week now since Election Day. Basically where things stand, all the networks, including the Associated Press, who we use here, have called the race for Joe Biden. Trump campaign is filing lawsuits and alleging that there is fraud, which might, even they are not saying will flip the results of the election. There's a great Time magazine piece that we're going to go through and go state by state for each of the lawsuits that have been filed there by the Trump campaign. And I think that we'll start with Pennsylvania, which is the most important one. So we'll recall on Election Day, around there was that compelling Philadelphia election officials to stop counting ballots. That was dismissed by a federal court judge. Then they wanted to compel state election officials to allow the Trump campaign officials closer observations of the counting process. Of course, a state judge ruled in the campaign's favor on that, and the court agreed to hear the case at the Supreme Court. Basically, what that allowed is that observers will get closer within about 6 feet, maintaining social distancing and all that. This was something the campaign was outraged about before that.
Doesn't change any of the vote counting.
Correct.
Just means people can get closer.
Just means that people could have gotten closer at the time. There was some controversy over whether that was implemented properly or not. That's where that stands. The third one, and these things will get very interesting, is where they want to compel the Pennsylvania Secretary of State and all 67 counties to impose an earlier date for voters to show proof of identification if it was not on their initial ballot. There has not yet been a resolution to that litigation. Fourth one was to compel Montgomery County to stop counting mail-in ballots. They basically filed a suit to halt the process there. That litigation is also ongoing. This is over an allegation that they were counting 600 ballots that had not been placed in secrecy envelopes and therefore were not complying with the requirements, unresolved at the time.
And 600 ballots.
600 ballots is not going to move
Is not
anything.
going to change anything in Pennsylvania, even if the Trump campaign was to prevail.
So then the next one, so to intervene, this is the big kahuna, so to speak, was to intervene in an already existing dispute right now in the U.S. Supreme Court about whether ballots received after 8 p.m. on Election Day should count. That one is also ongoing. But we now know how many actual votes that is.
Yeah, so if we can throw A1C up, this shows you there were actually very few ballots that were returned after Election Day. So again, this controversy is over when mail-in ballots can arrive. You cannot vote after Election Day, okay? You have to have voted before Election Day, but it takes some time for the USPS to get the ballots in. So late in the game, the rule was changed, and this went to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, allowing a little bit of an extension, 3-day extension, for those mail-in ballots to arrive in order to be counted.
Right.
Okay? This is a legitimate legal question, and I don't know which direction this would go in, but the bottom line is, as you can see there, we're only talking about 10,000 ballots.
Not enough to swing the election.
We're only talking about 10,000 ballots that arrived after Election Day, mail-in ballots. This is like the one truly legitimate question. Honestly, we're going to go through all these lawsuits.
Yeah.
This is the one that's the biggest and the most sort of legitimate legal question out there. Even if it went in favor of the Trump campaign, Joe Biden's margin has far exceeded at this point, 10,000 ballots. So it's not going to change anything.
And the reason I just went through all of those is I wanted to make it very clear that right now, as it stands, there is no way that the Pennsylvania ballots could change in a way that would go for Trump. And that matters a lot because Wisconsin and Michigan have already been called. And so there's not, at least, and we'll get to some of the ones that are being alleged there. Wisconsin, there's not even really anything going on.
They're going to do a recount in Wisconsin.
That's right. But
unlikely to change the results.
But it's 20,000 votes. It's extraordinarily unlikely in order to have something swing 20,000 votes in the middle of a recount. And there's not even any widespread lawsuits going on in that state. So if Pennsylvania is not able to be flipped on any of these lawsuits or any of these allegations, the results of the election look relatively clear. Now, next, we're going to go to Nevada. There are only 2 lawsuits there that have been filed, imposing an injunction on state verification machines that was rejected on November 6th by a federal judge. The second one was to, again, compel state election officials to allow public closer observation at a Clark County ballot facility that was also rejected by a judge at the time. So then we'll go to Michigan, which is another important one. And Michigan is where I would say the more, the bigger claims, the biggest claims come from the Trump campaign and many of the people around him surrounding Detroit and Wayne County, where they allege, I think it's 93% of the ballots came in for Biden. Obviously, that's an eye-popping figure, but actually relatively in line with Hillary Clinton. So what you can see here is that first lawsuit in Michigan was to halt the counting of absentee ballots on grounds that campaign officials had not been given access to observe the process as required by state law. That was denied in Michigan court claims. Second one was to halt certifications of election results in Detroit, largely because in Detroit, which is a Democratic stronghold. This was denied on November 6th, saying that there was no evidence that oversight procedures had not been followed. So then we'll go to Georgia, where again...
To sum up, they're basically dead in the water in Michigan.
Yes.
None of their suits have succeeded.
Correct. And so they have an affidavit. I believe they're going to try and file some more. This is, again, around Wayne County. They have a range of allegations, hundreds of sworn statements and others. And look, these are sworn statements. We should take them seriously from Republican poll watchers and a city of Detroit election worker official and a former attorney general. There, that as you can see there, the Secretary of State, of course, maintains that there is no statewide voter fraud going on amid the calls for the resignation. That one's for Georgia, sorry about that. But in Michigan, and this one again is where we should be clear, there is yet to be any evidence there. However, these affidavits and others have not yet been responded to in an official capacity. The attorney for the city of Detroit has dismissed the case as another belated lawsuit raising baseless allegations. Of course, that's probably what they were always going to say. We'll wait and see how that one turns out. That was filed Monday afternoon in Detroit. So that's that's the last one there that is ongoing, so to speak. But given the state of facts and the judge and all that, it does not look likely to proceed.
We should also say Joe Biden won Michigan by a pretty healthy margin.
Correct.
3 points and about 150,000 votes at this point, with most of the ballots counted. So even if you grant the Trump campaign, okay, maybe, and I'm not saying that they do have a point. Okay, they have a point and they are successful in this lawsuit, which seems very unlikely. Very unlikely that you're going to shift 150,000 votes in 3-point margin in that state. So that is an incredible long shot as well. So moving on to Georgia.
Okay, I know this is tedious, but it's important because this is what's being alleged and this is determining the results of our election. So in Georgia right now, the ongoing suit on this very tight race of about 14,000 lead vote for Joe Biden, one of them is to disqualify 53 ballots in, I think it's Chatham County. I don't know. Georgians, don't get mad at me like you did on DeKalb.
I'm gonna go with Chatham.
Chatham County, so basically they said that a poll worker reported seeing a stack of late ballots that may have arrived after 7 p.m. deadline get mixed in with the ballots that had arrived on time. Superior Court judge rejected that suit on November 5th. So that is where we stand in the state of Georgia.
To sum up in Georgia, they challenged a grand total of 53 ballots, and that challenge they've already lost. And the Georgia Secretary of State, and this is A1D that we can put up on the screen, who is a Republican, has repeatedly come out and said, look, Georgia's been a mess with a few of the past elections. This one actually went relatively smoothly by comparison. And so the Republican Secretary of State in Georgia, still maintaining, saw no evidence of significant voter fraud. And in fact, the Trump campaign hasn't even really alleged specifics in terms of voter fraud in the state of Georgia. So that's that one.
Right, and the key also to understand is that the senators in Georgia, Loeffler and Perdue, both called on that Secretary of State to resign, as well as, I think, almost every statewide Republican in the state. So lots going on in Georgia, but in terms of specifics, they don't seem to have a right with him, except for, he said that, ballots were going to be counted by this date, and then they weren't. I mean, look, I sympathize with that. It's pretty annoying, given how much of a mess this is, but that's not evidence of widespread fraud in Georgia.
We should also remember the context politically in Georgia, which is that the two senators are facing a runoff in January, and they don't want to get crosswise of Trump supporters. That doesn't mean like what they're saying, the way they're stirring the pot is okay or acceptable. Of course it's not. But as you're viewing their actions, remember to view it through that political lens of they're afraid of pissing off Trump supporters who feel wronged in all of this, and Trump campaign is, not behaving at their best behavior either, and we'll get into that in a minute. But that is the overall context here in terms of what has actually been alleged. The most specific allegations related to 53 ballots, not enough to change the total, and that's already been dismissed.
And the same last one here, I promise, Arizona. Let's throw A1E Reed's tweet up there on the screen. Here's what we know from that screen, which is that in Maricopa County, again, they are challenging 180 rejected ballots in Maricopa, and Biden currently leads the state by about 14,000 votes. So again, you can see that that is not going to make any substantive difference whatsoever. Now, I think it's important. What we laid out here are the actual facts and the affidavits. So there's a lot of things flying around from the Trump campaign, the statistical cases against Biden's win. Okay, that's nice, but that's not how you make your case in a court of law with actual facts, affidavits, and more. And currently, of the 12 lawsuits that they filed, they're basically 0 for 12 in terms of the ones that have been decided. And there's a few others pending litigation. Of course, I think the Pennsylvania one is going to be the most interesting one. And it's very fascinating from an election law standpoint, but it's not going to change anything.
Right.
So that's where we are right now.
And there's a legal concept that essentially says if your ruling isn't going to change anything, then you don't bother. Right. So we may not even get an actual decision. The idea that this is going to go up to the Supreme Court, I'm not sure that that's really going to ultimately happen here. But let's say that it does. Let's say it goes in the Trump campaign's favor. Again, even if all of those remaining existing lawsuits were to go in the Trump campaign's favor, it would not change the results of this election. So why are we doing this? Twofold. Number one, tensions are very high.
Yeah.
And I understand why people are really nervous. Same. Nobody trusts anyone.
Yeah, on both sides. I really get it. I really do.
No one trusts the media. They shouldn't. No one trusts any of our political elites. They shouldn't. And so you have this incredibly fraught and nerve-wracking situation where you've got one side that says, look, these results were really close, and we're seeing all these allegations flying around and lawsuits, and we feel like we were robbed, and the media's lied to us, and we're not buying it, okay? We just ran down the facts. Here are the specific allegations. Even if they're true, still doesn't change the election result. On the other side, you have a lot of people are going, oh my God, the Trump campaign is trying to execute a coup. Right. Now look, let me say, their intent is 100% nefarious. If they could pull off a coup through these lawsuits and change the world, they would. But if this is a coup, it is the most pathetic coup that you've ever seen in your life, right? They've lost every lawsuit so far in court. The only one that they got is we can get some more people in the room to watch as we lose the election. That's the only thing that they've won so far. So the purpose of this is for everyone to calm down, recognize that this is the other piece. Overwhelming majority of Americans believe that Joe Biden won the election. It's 80% according to a poll, to the extent that we can trust polls, but this is, rule of thumb, basically, somewhere in the...
Here's what we got.
Within a 20% margin of error.
Showing it to you. 50% margin of error.
Most people believe that Joe Biden won the White House. If you watch Fox News, you hear them referring to him now as president-elect. You hear them pouring cold water on the wilder allegations. And so we wanted to take everyone's position here seriously and understand why you would feel that the Trump campaign's actions are nefarious and that they're trying to steal the election. They are, but they're doing a very poor job of it, and they're not going to succeed. And understand also why people would be nervous that there was funny. But I don't trust the Democratic establishment either. So I get where you're coming from for that. And the media has no credibility to actually go through and piece by piece litigate these disputed claims. So that's what we wanted to do today.
Yes.
The other piece that happened yesterday, which kind of just shows you how poorly served we are by a media that trades in sensationalism for profit. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo came out yesterday, got asked a question about a transition of power, and he made a really stupid joke, an ill-advised, ill-conceived joke. But everyone absolutely melted down about this as if this was, proof that they are executing an effective, nefarious plot to steal the election. It was clearly a really bad joke. Let's take a listen to this sound.
Is the State Department currently preparing to engage with the Biden transition team? And if not, at what point does a delay hamper a smooth transition or pose a risk to national security?
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. All right? We're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly. The world should have every confidence that the transition necessary to make sure that the State Department is functional today, successful today, and successful with the president who's in office on January 20th, a minute afternoon, will also be successful. I went through a transition on the front, and I've been on the other side of this. I'm very confident that we will do all the things that are necessary to make sure that the government, the United States government, will continue to perform its national security function as we go forward.
So look, he makes
Clearly joking,
he
folks.
makes the bad joke, and then he goes on to say the things that you would frankly want him to say. He even acknowledges he was on the other side of this, which seems to indicate that he's now he was on the winning side coming into power. Now he's on the losing side going out of power. But when New York Times and CNN and
they just
everyone else,
put the words, right? They just put it in, they don't leave
Without
it out the
context.
context. And it's crazy. It's unhinged because it's ginning people up into believing that there is a real coup. This is dangerous
it's
for
irresponsible.
democracy.
It's completely irresponsible.
I'm going to do my radar on this too, which is about norms and all of this. And I think it's very important. I'm glad we're doing this. That everybody just be like, everybody calm the hell down. And you know who's actually doing a better job about this? Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Look at the series. If you think they were throwing a military coup to oust him or to deny him ascending to the presidency, don't you think he'd be pretty freaked out about it? But here's what he had to say. Take a listen.
We are already beginning the transition. We're well underway. And the ability for the administration in any way by failure to recognize this our win does not change the dynamic at all in what we're able to do. We've announced yesterday, as you know, the health group that we put together today. We're going to be moving along in a consistent manner, putting together our administration, the White House, and reviewing who we're going to pick for the cabinet positions. And nothing's going to stop that.
So, look, that's the right approach.
Yeah.
Because not only is it based on reality, which is that Joe Biden is going to be the next president, none of their scrambling and the president's refusal to concede and any of that is going to make a difference in what is going to happen in January, which is that Joe Biden is going to be inaugurated as the next president of the United States. But here's the other thing. You might think after 4 years of trying to cover Donald Trump, the media might have learned something, which is that when you seize on something like Pompeo's comments, you blow them all up out of proportion, you end up actually giving him more power. So if you actually treated this as the sort of like pathetic flailing that frankly it really is, then you deny him that power to inflame sentiments in this country. You make it less partisan also so that his supporters feel less under siege, less under attack, and the whole thing goes much more smoothly in a country that is, continues to be very much divided and on edge. Instead, they have a profit motive to make this all as dynamic and scary and exciting as possible. And it really does a dramatic disservice to the American people. And again, look, I'm not trying to excuse what Trump is tweeting. He should concede. Look, if they have legitimate claims, fine, pursue them. I have no problem with that. So far, there's nothing there that would be significant enough to change the results of the election. They should move forward with a smooth transfer of power, but no one's going to be surprised when he doesn't do that and continues to deny that he lost and that he was robbed and all that stuff. He's going to do that, but the process is going to move forward, and I've seen nothing to indicate that they really have an effective, nefarious plot plan that is going to change any of that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, which is that this is really Matt Taibbi's hate Inc. thesis, like borne out in real time,
Yes.
which is everybody ginning themselves up. For what reason? Hate each other in order to divide more, in order to make more money and rip the country in half. And it wasn't that hard. I mean, it took us about 20 minutes here to lay it all out for you. They have a lot of time there on cable, but they don't want to because that would require them actually telling the truth. But there you go.
All right, we're going to tell you what's on our radar, so that's next.